Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Mark. My pronouns are he and they. And today we're going to be talking about all things online, all things social media. It's such a big part of many of our lives. And we have a wonderful panel of people that I'm so privileged to be sitting next to, all of whom are active and visible online in some way. And so we're just going to have a chat about our experiences, and then there'll be some time for questions a bit later on. So I wonder first if we might just introduce ourselves and say a little bit about ourselves. And I guess I'll start. I'm Mark Cusack. I'm a mental health coach, and I specialize in supporting people who are struggling with their sexuality or gender, particularly people on the bi spectrum or fluid people and that kind of thing. I run a platform called Not Defining, which talks about all of those things. So that's me. Shall we go along the line, Steph?
Sure, yeah. Can you guys hear me? Is this on? I'm Steph. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a writer, poet, kind of content creator. Just proudly bisexual, trans man, just kind of vibing. And I really love animals as well.
And I forgot to mention, we'll just do a little brief visual of us. I've got dark brown hair. I'm wearing a white t-shirt with the Bi Pride colours. I'm very tall and kind of male-presenting, Caucasian, and that's me.
Yeah, I've got brown hair, like Greek olive skin, covered in tattoos. Wearing a black t-shirt, black cargo trousers, and really bright green trainers.
Hi everyone, I'm Dee. My pronouns are they, them. I'm an award-winning sex educator, author, and my book is coming out in February 2025, Beyond Bananas and Condoms, all about sex education for trans and queer individuals, but also cis and heterosexual individuals. I am an author, and I'm currently the audience development producer at Queer AF. I've got so much more that I could also say, but I'll keep it short. And then in my description, I have long brown hair that's not my own. It is hair extensions. A bright pink fringe. I have glasses. I'm currently wearing all black. I'm tattooed, and I've got really chunky New Rock shoes on. So yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Jade Eloise. My pronouns are she, they. I am a body positive advocate and activist. I'm also a fat liberationist, and I co-founded a group called Fat Liberation London. I'm also a writer, artist and poet, and a lot of my work centres around intersectionality of identity. And then in terms of what I'm wearing and what I look like, I'm a fat black woman. I'm light-skinned, I've got curly brown hair, and I'm wearing a bright purple top to go with the bi theme, and black trousers and black trainers. Oh, and I have the world's biggest bi fan as well.
Hi, my name is Erin James. My pronouns are she, they. And I would describe myself as an artivist, so using art as a vessel and tool for social change. I find that to be a more engaging, decolonial, alternative form or vessel, a through tool to engage with social justice, particularly for people maybe outside of education or who've been like historically excluded from like accessing that type of information in education. Speak slower. Okay, thanks. Yeah, you got this. Words. Yes, so I am a poet, actor, workshop facilitator, a zine maker. I am the founder of Tough Cookie Mag, which is a zine based around trauma, mental health, queerness, blackness. What was the other thing I was just going to say? It's gone, so it can't be that important. Visual description, I am black mixed, light skin. I've got braids with purple in them, also the hair that is not my own. I'm wearing like a green crop top, long sleeves, got a keffiyeh across my lap, got trackies, black shoes, and I've got a fidget toy because I like stimming, and some rings and jewellery that I brought from downstairs.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thanks so much for being here. So, as I said, all of us are quite active online in some way. And I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you all was just to tell everyone a little bit about how you came to the online space, how you decided to become kind of visible in your identity, and how that kind of all came about. Shall we start with you, Steph?
Sure. Well, like many people of my generation, I started on Tumblr. Not so great. Well, sometimes it was good because, I mean, it did help me discover myself. Basically, that's where it began. I made loads of queer friends and figured out that there were more ways to exist in the world and that I wasn't weird or wrong for feeling different. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. I went to uni, which again was a wonderful journey of self-discovery. Being away from home, I could fully lean into everything. It's where I started exploring my gender identity as well as my sexuality. And it was, it just kind of grew from there as going to more events like this, finding more community, learning the language for how I felt and learning like labels that felt correct for me and allowed me to come into my own. And then I kind of just started applying that to online, and it wasn't even anything deliberate with me. I just started talking about my life because I was like, oh, this thing happened to me today, and I guess it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't bi or if I wasn't trans. And I guess people started to kind of resonate with that a little bit and kind of enjoy just, I guess, hearing normal accounts from someone who is just living like a normal life and showing that there is life after you come out. And there's more that can happen. It's not just a big coming out journey. It's like you can get to a spot where you can just be annoyed because someone's taking too long in the supermarket, or you can have a very valid healthcare complaint. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. And it's kind of the same nowadays. I don't really post anything with the intent of like getting an audience or getting attention. It's just I just really enjoy posting about my life and the intersectionalities of that. And it's nice because, it somehow seems to offer people some sort of, whether it's comfort or being seen. And so, I guess I just kind of, it started out as just a fun, random thing. I take it a bit more seriously now because I am aware that I have a bit of a platform and there are eyes on me and I do want to be a good influence and a good kind of role model, I suppose. I guess that's it.
Thank you so much.
For me, when I was younger, growing up, I was the go-to person that people would come to talk about sex with. So when we were in year 6 and we had a lesson on periods, for some reason, I just became the person that everyone decided I was going to be the educator. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was experiencing, but I just stepped into that role. And since then, when I first began having sex with individuals, when I started having relationships, I just always was that person that people came to for advice or to hear my story or just to talk about sex very openly. I guess I don't have a filter and I'm happy to talk about anything when it comes to sex and gender. So then during lockdown, I realised that there was a gap in content online for people like me who were questioning their gender, who were queer, but had never been with someone who has the same genitalia as themselves. So I thought, why not use this time that I've got? I've just finished my degree. Why don't I just create content online? And through that, I then discovered my transness and my non-binariness, and then I went full force into creating content that was sex education for trans and queer people, content that we didn't get growing up. And that's kind of what steers me with my content today, is always thinking, what is something that I wish I'd seen when I was younger? What questions do I have? What can I provide to the community? And especially to the non-binary and neurodivergent community who have no sort of representation in the classroom or lack of representation in the classroom. So I just thought I want to talk about certain things online from a non-binary perspective, and I'm going to do that. And then people seemingly liked it. And now I talk about my own personal experience being trans, being in a T for T relationship, exploring all kinds of avenues in life. And sometimes it is just mundane things, and sometimes it is more serious conversations. But yeah, I think for me, my platform is about providing messages and resources for people that they wish they had growing up, or they wish they still had to this day because we don't have them. So yeah, I talk about anything and everything on my platform, and I love to be authentic and open about my experiences, and through that I've met so many amazing people and I've got so many opportunities, and I know that I've directly helped people, which the followers and likes, they're great, but having people message me directly saying, I used your content to come out to my mum, means more than anything. So I'm so grateful for the content that I've created and the people I've got to work with through just deciding I want to talk about sex online.
Thanks so much, Dee.
I would say for me, growing up, I always felt like I had a lot of differences to everyone else around me, the most obvious being the size of my body. I've always been in a fat body. And I think also being mixed race and growing up in predominantly white spaces, there wasn't a lot of space for me to explore the intersectionalities of my identity. So I turned to online spaces because if you can't talk to the people around you, talk to a bunch of strangers online. Don't do that. That was not good advice. But it did give me a platform to just openly explore who I was as a person. So I just started sharing my inner thoughts, and being a neurodivergent person and only realising that in adulthood, what I didn't realise at the time was that the easiest way for me to express myself was through poetry, because I didn't necessarily connect with my emotions the same way everyone else did. So my online platform became a lot about my written word. Eventually, when I became more confident in myself, my spoken word as well. And it just gave me a space to express myself, and in doing so, I connected with so many other people who were on similar journeys, exploring their own parts of who they are. I connected with mostly fat people, body positive people. Through body positivity, I came to fat liberation, and within fat liberation, it just really intersects so many other identities. It's about feeling unconditionally accepted, understanding your worth, understanding your need for respect and equality. So there are so many other people in the communities that I am now within who are also queer, who are also exploring their gender identity, who are also looking for liberation for their intersectional identities. So that's very much what the online space has offered me, and it's given me so much in return in terms of community.
Sorry, I sort of feel like I should be in the audience because I'm enjoying listening so much. I'm like, I could just skip, but I won't. Yeah, so I similarly also started on Tumblr. Oh God, I remember my bio just said DTF, which is an acronym for down to fuck. Like, and I was like 13. It was ridiculous. I sort of used it as a way to like make this digital archive and mood board that helped me figure out my identity and who I was, and that intersected a lot with my race and my sexuality, and the gender part came later. Also YouTube. Like 10, 20 years ago, I don't know if anyone remembers, like you could access like soft porn without any like wall. So I would just like search hot girls kissing and be like, oh my God, I think I'm gay. And then it sort of morphed into, I guess the shift happened when I was older and like moving into Facebook, and that being associated with school and friendship and like being like what's socially acceptable, what's socially in, and that relationship got really toxic for me with social media. And as someone I live in Brighton, which is a very like white majority city, I felt like this sort of idea and theme of perception and gaze, whether that's like the straight gaze or the male gaze or the white gaze, on me my entire life. And so perception has always been this massive theme in my life. There's a really great Black sociologist called W.E.B. Du Bois, and he talks about the double consciousness, and it's sort of about you're existing as your own consciousness, but then also the consciousness of how everyone else around you is perceiving you. So I really fell into that trap, I guess, or was coaxed into it, and used it as a way to validate myself, as a way to enter harmful relationships, and seek validation from others and understand myself in relation to like how people were perceiving me. Then I became a social media manager when I was 18 for my local pub. And it was interesting using social media from a business perspective. I think like it was already a toxic relationship before, but it was completely soul destroying by that point because I was churning out content. I was doing things that I love, like photography and videography and making cool graphics, but it was used for like the benefit of capitalism, and something that I had no like personal gain or not gain relationship to. So yeah, struggled with that. And then I think the reclamation of that relationship in recent years has been me making content within like with a political focus. So I also do poetry, and I use poetry as a vessel of education. So I have like either, I do different types of poetry, but I post videos sometimes of research-based poems. So for example, I have one on the like history of gender fluidity in like pre-colonial Africa and other places across the globe. And I think using my art as a way to educate myself and other people, particularly intersecting with that online, has been so beneficial and so empowering. And it's this process of sort of reclaiming my love for what I can use social media for. And yes, I think that, and then the other poetry that I've sort of done, or the content I make, is maybe more personal based poems that again intersect with different parts of my identity and lived experiences. But what someone said earlier about making the type of content you wish you had when you were younger, like that's it for me, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really, really resonate with that point as well. It seems like so many of us have parts of our identities, or we are the types of people who maybe in the everyday world find it difficult to communicate what we want to express, and then in different ways we found the online space has tools and ways that we can kind of express that. And I was exactly the same. I struggled for so long in my life thinking that I was broken, I was weird, there was nobody like me, there was just no space for me in my everyday life. And so I went to some really dark places, and then one day I just decided to start talking about it online, and so many people just came and said, yeah, I resonate, yeah, I connect with that, oh my gosh. And it was amazing. And so every single piece of content that I make goes through one filter, which is, what would the 17-year-old, the 18-year-old Mark have needed to hear? And as long as I do that, it always resonates with someone, because there's people like us all around. So that was my experience. I was going to say, as we go along, if you're comfortable, like, we should share our handles and things so that people can see our work, if you like. So I wanted to ask kind of about the joys of social media and the online space, because I know that there's so many kind of negatives, of course, but I personally get a lot of joy out of it. And I wanted to kind of ask you all what things you enjoy about what you do online. Shall we start?
Yeah, I mean, the community is just a big part of it for me. I have literally so many of my best friends that I have now. I wouldn't know them if it wasn't for the internet. We live in different countries, some of us, or we just live really far away in the UK. So that's been a really big thing, because I don't know who I'd be without my friends and without the people that have like helped kind of shape me and just kind of held my hand through various stages of my life. I think also a joy of social media is when you find content that you just enjoy as well. Like, aside from finding stuff you relate to or stuff that comforts you, there's just really cool, fun stuff out there that's also being made by queer people or just people from marginalised communities that might not be getting the platforms that they deserve, but if you look for it, it's there. And there's just really, really cool, like, art, poetry, music, whatever you can think of, someone's probably making it. Like, if you want it, you can probably find it. And I just think that's something that we obviously wouldn't have if the internet didn't exist, because, yeah, like you said, despite all its pitfalls, it is a wonderful place for people to share art and connect and communicate. And I'm really grateful for it, for those aspects.
For me, finding the non-binary identity and finding non-binariness online saved my life. A few years back, I was so confused, I didn't know who I was, and just as I create content online that I know I want to see and that I would have liked to see growing up, I'm so grateful that there are people like us who are doing the exact same thing, because if I didn't find what non-binary was, I probably wouldn't be here today. And that's something that there's so much power in that somebody can find themselves through the internet, through somebody else's experience. And of course there are dark corners of the internet, as we all know. However, there are these moments of just pure clarity that come with being online and finding out my non-binariness, figuring it out, seeing that non-binary people exist, that we grow up, that we can have relationships, that we can have healthy sex, that we can do all these amazing things, was just so profound. But also now, because I have my platform, I use my platform to do the same thing for other people. So last year I created the campaign Trans Kids Deserve to Grow Up, in response to what the government was suggesting that schools implement within school around trans young people around what pronouns they can use in school, what name they can use in school, what bathrooms they can use. And through that, I was connected with so many young trans people and so many families who have sadly lost their young trans people. And through that, I've just found such a community in that space, and being able to give those trans young people, whether they're still here today or whether they're not here today, a space where they can share their story and their message. And I was really grateful that through founding that campaign online, I was able to go into Parliament and speak to politicians and say, hey, the trans kids need you, you've got to step up. And I'm so grateful that because I've found myself online, I'm now able to share other people's stories and make sure that other people can find themselves online, and, you know, signpost them to other people that I think that they'll enjoy their content or that they'll resonate their content with, because obviously as a white individual, I can't provide them with everything. So I really love being able to say, hey, check out my friend here. Hey, check out this page. And it's just, there's such a beauty in the online community that I don't think we talk a lot about. We always talk about the negatives, but being online saved my life, and it saved a lot of young people's life, and it continues to save young people's life, particularly trans young people who don't get any representation anywhere else in their lives. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think the community aspect of social media is probably the bit that I like the most. I think you are going to connect with people, like you said, around the world, or just spread across the UK that you might not have the opportunity to cross paths with otherwise. For me, that started off in body positive spaces. I was just really fed up of feeling so lost in myself, so ashamed of my body, so ashamed of who I was as a person. I was constantly trying to slim down, to take up less space, and now I get to show up and say, actually, everyone deserves to take up as much space as they want and to live their lives as authentically as they can, and to advocate for safety and equality for everyone, regardless of their individual identities. And I wouldn't be able to feel confident saying that without the people that I've met along the way through social media. It was from being around people who were in fat bodies, who were in queer spaces, that helped me to recognise that I'm queer, that helped me to recognise that my gender identity didn't fit so neatly into the label of being a woman. There was so much intersection between being fat and being kind of sexually liberated, because often there is a perception that if you're in a bigger body, then you're not as desirable, your body's not as important. So actually there's a lot of discussion around gender and sexuality within those spaces. So it was definitely community for me that I think social media offers so much of it. There is obviously sometimes the negatives of kind of taking up space in those communities, but mostly the positives outweigh those hugely.
For me, I think one of the main positives of social media and how it intersects with my life and my work is like the accessibility, which is obviously not just like, it's not perfect. And there's intersections within that of how it can be better, and who has access to it and whose voices are heard, what voices the algorithm chooses to uplift, which ones they choose to censor. But I think that access to information and education is like game changing, and that if you do have access to an internet connection, or you have access to a smartphone, or you know someone who has access to those things, that you can have so many resources provided for you, whether those be like signposting to places, communities, organizations, or charities that might like end up saving your life, or like you meet your best friend that when you didn't realize that there was anyone else that also like looked like you and like went through the same experiences as you, and how powerful and empowering that is. I think that's incredible. So for one, it would be like the accessibility, and then I think also echoing like community, and it just made me think of like chosen family, which I think is a big like theme for queer kids, trans kids, people of colour, refugees, and how social media can be used as like a vessel for connecting with people that really see you and understand you, where it may not be like appropriate or safe for you to be fully yourself in physical spaces that you exist in. So I think social media really helped me to especially with my bi-ness, my queerness, it helped me to like exist loudly in a quiet way online until I was ready to exist loudly in all spaces.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you made that point. Actually, one of the things that I kind of do in my life, and I'm still doing it, I'm still on the journey, is like I use social media as like the first thing to like try things out. It's weird, like show the entire world on the internet before you show like your family. But it is this thing because you have like a kind of niche or a kind of group of people, and you can kind of test things out. And I've discovered so many things about myself, my bisexuality, my asexuality, my non-binary identity, also my neurodiversity, like so many things, different parts of my masculine or feminine side, my energy and everything. I can just kind of find out about it and then kind of ask questions about it, get comments, speak with people, talk about it, and then you can feel more confident in the outside world. I love that about social media. It's so nice to talk about the joy that we get. So thank you for that. I know that obviously there are a lot of challenges that we all face online, and I'm sure that being kind of quite visible as queer people, as bi people, online comes with a lot of its own challenges. And I wonder if I could ask kind of what are some of the big challenges that you've faced, maybe any examples in your journey?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one for me because I'm out online, obviously, as a bi man, but then I'm also out online as a trans man. So those intersectionalities are really interesting because I don't think I've ever faced, I think it kind of confuses people. They don't know whether they want to be transphobic or biphobic because you kind of have to pick one. Because sometimes if they're both, they kind of cancel out their own hatred because they're so idiotic. And it's almost not affirming because it's not, but they almost accidentally get it right. For example, if they're like biphobic and they're saying to me, well, you're either a straight man or you're a gay man. I'm like, oh, but you're getting my gender correct, so that's cool. But then it's like if they go out of their way to like misgender me or something, and I'm like, well, then what does that mean for my body? Do you know what I mean? It's very interesting. And it's, I'd like to joke about it and make light of it because it makes things easier to obviously cope with. Sorry, this is rustling. There we go. But I mean, obviously it does come with its downsides, and it's a shame because I love being open and loud online, and I love being that kind of resource for people, especially younger trans people. One of the biggest challenges is just existing, and all you're doing is trying to be a good person, trying to offer resources and support, trying to be a safe space, and then people just go out of their way to send really like horrible messages, things that I highly doubt they'd say to your face as well, which I think is really interesting. So like you've gone out of your way to message a stranger, but would you say this to me if you saw me on the street? Would you even know on the street? You only know this about me because I've given you that access to that side of myself. I think if you saw me walking down the street, I have been told, to be fair, that I give off bisexual energy, which I do love. I don't ever want anyone to think I'm straight, so that's great. But at the same time, it's like even if you did see me in the street and you thought these things about me, I don't think most people would go out of their way to say these things. It's like you're just being so hateful for no reason. I don't even know if, like, they care that much, if that makes sense. Because, like, they send this message and then they probably just go about their day. I don't know if they're really thinking about it afterwards. But that makes me wonder, like, do you think about the impact of, if you'd said that to someone who maybe didn't have quite a thick skin and wasn't as used to it, unfortunately, we do have to build up thick skins, which I don't think we should have to. But just imagine if you'd said that to somebody else who wasn't as kind of used to it and who wasn't prepared, and it's just literally a person existing. That's definitely a challenge because not only is it kind of hurtful and hard to deal with, but I then get like stressed out and worried thinking, well, what else are you saying to other people? And what else are you possibly doing in your life? And who else are you harming? So that's definitely, I'd say one of the biggest challenges about being like out online.
Two of the challenges that I've been facing most recently both revolve around me being non-binary. So the first challenge is that people want to define me. So they see me as not non-binary enough or not trans enough. They tell me I'm not allowed to use a certain label. They tell me that actually I'm a lesbian because I'm with a trans guy. They try and define me by how they view these identities. And that's so hard and it's so difficult because within that is just erasure for non-binary people. And then in the same breath, I'm also experiencing erasure for non-binary people in the trans community where unfortunately binary trans individuals will see non-binary individuals as other and they will push us out of the community or they will see us as damaging the community. And I've had trans people say to me, you're ruining the trans community. Even though I'm part of the community and I'm fighting for the community, and most of the time I'm doing more activism than many of these people who are saying these things are doing. And recently that's been really difficult. And yes, we have to have thick skin, but we all have moments where we break down. Last week I had to have a cry to my boyfriend because I was just like, I can't, why do people want to define me when I'm telling you exactly what I am on paper? I'm saying this is who I am, I'm not hiding it, just accept that. Don't define it for what you want to define it as. But people still want to define you as something and they want to put you in a box. And yeah, I think for non-binary people, if you don't look a certain way or if you don't present to people a certain picture of non-binariness, they want to define you in their own way and they will do whatever possible to be like, haha, you're wrong, you're not non-binary, you're this or you're that. And that's so difficult. And there are so many young people who may receive comments like that and then say, okay, I'm not trans then, and then go into hiding. And for a long time, that's what I did. I cut my hair short. I dressed androgynously because I thought this is the only way people would accept that I'm non-binary. But regardless of how another person perceives me, I'm going to be non-binary at the end of the day. So they can think I'm a she, her, they can think I'm a he, him, they can look at me and think whatever they want, but at the end of the day, I know who I am, and that's what matters. But not everybody has the thick enough skin to accept that and to be able to challenge that and tackle that. And therefore, unfortunately, we are seeing queer and trans people losing their lives because they are being so attacked online by their own community sometimes, but also from the wider community as well. And it's really difficult to navigate, particularly I find as a non-binary individual at the moment in these spaces. Even now, talking about bisexuality as a non-binary person, so many people have told me, what? They counteract each other, but they don't. And you define you for you, and we should accept people and their definitions of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really hard if you're accessing online spaces to find yourself. There can be an element of feeling like you're losing yourself because people do expect you to fit within a certain box, especially when you sit at multiple intersections of identity. If people come across my page because they're looking for information on body positivity or existing in a fat body, and then I start talking about queerness, they're like, well, I can't relate to that, so this page is no longer accessible for me. If I start talking about gender identity and people can't relate to that, then they feel like suddenly I'm no longer someone that they want to engage with. So it can be really hard to show up as your whole self when people are looking for parts of you that they identify with. And I think it's also really challenging when we have to perhaps censor parts of ourselves because of the platforms themselves actually being prejudiced against certain identities or certain bodies. There's been whole campaigns about being able to show up as a queer person or show up as a fat person or as a black person, and we still find that our content is often being censored or being, it's like a term like shadow banned, for instance, where we less of our content is being shown to people. So it restricts our community, it restricts us showing up as ourselves. And often I have to ask, is it worth me even showing up in this space? Because I'm not going to be able to connect the way that I used to be able to. So I think it can be really hard because I want to advocate for being your whole self, embodying your whole self. And that's really challenging when either people expect you to only be one thing, and we're all so much more complex than being just one thing, or when the platforms themselves create a barrier to that as well.
Wrote some notes for this because my brain capacity goes down the later it goes in the day. But I think some of the biggest cons, I think especially that affect me and my lived experiences, is within this culture of rapidity in social media and the amount of content that we consume. I just don't imagine that to be particularly healthy or natural. And then the type of content, particularly in my sphere, it's very much an echo chamber of anti-racist activism, queer and trans-based activism, decolonial activism. And so especially with everything that's going on at the moment, with there's been the recent far-right marches, the white terrorism in this country, the occupation of Palestine, so many more things than that. And seeing that constantly, especially when some of that affects your lived experiences, seeing people reshare it without trigger warnings or without thought to how that's going to affect me, who uses social media to make money or to exist or to spread political messages of hope. things that I think are really important. I find that so damaging. And that happened in 2020. It happened in October, November, December with Palestine. It's happened recently with the far-right marches. And I find it very hard to exist online with that. And it's very ironically or like weirdly interlinked with the positives of social media, because people have access to social media and to phones. Like the murder of George Floyd was filmed on a smartphone that led to this revolution and the resurfacing of the Black Lives Matter movement. Without this, like, we wouldn't be able to seek justice in the same way. So it is inherently also a positive, but I think we have to understand the complexities and nuances of it, and who it can damage just as much as it benefits. Yeah, and I think that's probably all I want to say on that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really resonate with the point about kind of trying to be one thing. I'm quite aware that because of the algorithms, if I decided to be a bisexual man and do content on #BiGuys, I could probably grow really, really, really fast. I know that because that's what the algorithm wants. They want someone that is just one thing. But my platform is called Not Defining, and it just would not be me if I didn't talk about all these other aspects. So I think the actual algorithms actually compound that. I find one of the biggest challenges is actually that topic about the politicization of our identities. There's obviously like a lot of people who speak about politics and inclusion and equality and inequality and all of these very important issues. What I find is that I might just be talking about my identity. I might just be talking about, like you said, just I'm a bisexual, non-binary person. I'm going to the shop. I'm doing this. Like, I'm not actually wanting to debate my identity or whatever else. And people actually think that that's an invitation for them to be like, oh yeah, but actually, you know, does bisexuality exist? Or like, you know, what about, you know, trans rights and stuff? And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, just us existing, and then of course, the more intersections you have, it gets even worse. I think people are so used to being able to just make ridiculous, you know, comments, hostile comments online, and then we have to like get dragged into like a whole big debate about our existence every time we want to just post like a cat video or something. It's just like, no. So I really struggle with kind of trying to manage that. We have a moment left, and then we're going to go to questions. But I just want to very quickly, if we could run down the line and give any kind of tips or advice, as we're all kind of people who have confidence engaging in our different ways online, and there'll be people perhaps in the audience who maybe don't feel that confident or struggle with it or are at different stages. What advice would you give to people who are just coming to navigate being visible online?
This might be a bit of like a rogue sounding piece of advice,
Do it.
but don't be afraid of the block button. Genuinely, I for some reason used to be so like, oh, but maybe I should. No, if someone is coming into your mentions, coming into your DMs, just block them and move on with your day. Especially if it's a stranger. Like, I don't owe you anything. I don't owe you an answer, especially if you're coming in with hatred or negativity. Yeah, just block people, mute words, you know, because obviously there's all the positivity of if you're starting to come into yourself, yes, harness that, use online space. Use online spaces to find friends, find community, you know, follow hashtags you like, see what other people are doing. But in the vein, in a different vein, protect yourself and protect your space. You know, use a fine-tooth comb, weed out any bad people, any negativity, because you don't need to be seeing that. There is nothing that these people are going to give you that's going to enrich your life or help in any way. So do not be shy, be liberal with that block button, and just get them out of there, because they don't need to be there and you don't need to see it.
Tell them.
Yes.
Yeah. And following on from that, which I guess is going to be a little bit controversial in the sense of talking about being online, is that you're allowed to take a step back from it. You don't have to live your whole existence online. If you don't want to put something online, you have the boundary and you can set that boundary. If you don't want somebody talking about something, you can block words, you can block people. You are more than your online presence. You're a real person, and that means you need to take the time to be a real person and to recover when you may have, you know, hate spilling in. You need time just to be a person, and you can take a step back from that. And if you're not enjoying what you're creating, why are you creating it? Because that's the whole point of us creating our content, and that's perhaps the only reason that we are successful in creating content is because we love creating the content we create. So the minute you start thinking, oh, I don't want to film today, people are going to say this, I know it's going to be controversial, don't do it. Or reconsider, or think, what can I do? How can I look after myself? And that's the priority, is self-care. If you need to step away from your phone, you can. You don't have to read the news all the time. You don't have to be on Twitter or X or TikTok if it's damaging you. You can take a step back, that's completely okay. And you're still an activist, even if you're not actively commenting on a situation that's happening, because you need to recover first before you can be an activist.
I think following on from that, I would add that your emotional and mental health is the most important thing. As a mental health practitioner, I'm always talking to people about how there's no bad emotions. All emotions serve a purpose. And sometimes things on social media are probably going to bring up quite big emotions, like anger, for instance. If people are coming at you with a lot of hate, you're going to rightly feel anger. Anger is often something that tells us that we're experiencing injustice. So it's okay to feel that anger. But I would go with the block button, as you said, Steph, because what I then ask myself is, okay, it's okay, I'm feeling angry because I'm experiencing an injustice, but does that person deserve my emotional energy? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. So if I'm engaging in conversation with them, I'm giving them a piece of myself that they don't deserve to have access to. So it's more important to keep your emotional reserves and use that anger, whatever, or that incitement, because there's lots of positive emotions from social media as well, that joy, whatever it is you're experiencing, use it in a way that's good for you and good for other people. So use it to have important conversations with the people around you. Use it to engage with your communities. Don't use it to feed someone who's just going to make you feel worse about yourself.
I think I share similar sentiments. I would also say, like, with the high level of visibility on social media and like the fact that you are giving so many people access to you, like, to consider that and think about like why you want to do that and like what are your intentions behind that, because I think for me my intentions, especially previously, were in validation and in trying to understand what people's perception was of me so that I could then cater to their perceptions and their tastes and mold myself to fit into their boxes. So again, as I was talking about earlier, that process of reclamation and unlearning, relearning has been super beneficial for me, but also the amount of access they have to you, like, that's a privilege for them. Like, you're inviting them into your space, so I think don't forget that, and let that be at the front of your mind whenever you are making content and what you're choosing to talk about and to share, and that if people aren't like connecting with it for whatever reason, or how people are perceiving you is making you feel negative, again, block button, goodbye. Muting people's stories and posts, best thing that's ever happened to me. And there was one other point I wanted to make. I guess, yeah, just going back to this idea of perception and also validation, I think it's okay to be really honest with yourselves. Like, I know for me, I definitely do still post for validation, whether that's for my career, for my body, for like how nice I did my eyeliner that day, for if I'm a good enough activist, am I making sure, like, do people know I'm a good enough activist? I've got to post every day so people know that I'm still doing the work. Like, sometimes I do just have to let that go, or if I can't, just be really honest with myself that I can't let that go and make that decision if I'm going to post anyway, and be like, yeah, this picture is like 90% booty, nyash, and like, that's okay. Like, I want to feel confident today, and I can try and feel confident in myself without that, but if I'm doing that too, just to recognize that, be gentle with myself, be compassionate.
Thank you so much. I'm taking notes from all this advice. Thank you. And the 90% booty is a great moment just to finish on there. Thank you so much. We are going to have some time for some questions. I think we have about 15 minutes. So I don't know if I have the authority to pick or we'll have the roving mic. Why don't we take a question from the back? Sorry, I'll make you work. And then I guess whoever feels they'd like to answer can give an answer. I think we might have time for maybe 3 questions or so. But
Thank you so much. Hey guys, hey Mark, subscriber here.
would you introduce yourself as well?
I'm Sydney. Hi guys.
Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
That's me. Hi Mark, subscriber here. I was wondering, why do you think some people hold the attitude of like, why do you think some people think like it's less socially acceptable for men or like, yeah, men to be bisexual than it is for women to be bisexual? Like it's cool for like a girl to be bisexual and for a guy to be bisexual it's like weird, or like some women find it unattractive. It's like, I've always wondered why, and I was wondering if you could tell me your opinion on that. So, yeah.
Well, would anyone like to answer? I'm happy to.
Yeah, I mean, you can go first, and I'll go after you.
I think, I mean, first of all, just some people are very misinformed, but I think there's a lot to do with the concept of compulsory heterosexuality, whereby a lot of women traditionally have been kind of just expected to be heterosexual, and because of the inequality between men and women historically in a lot of places, women didn't necessarily have the freedom to actually express themselves. So a woman may have had a different sexuality, maybe might have been bi or gay or whatever it was, but because women were not free to actually make their own choices, it was just seen as, well, it doesn't really matter because they're going to get married and they're going to be subordinate to men. So society was just like, well, it doesn't really matter. Whereas the man's sexuality was a political issue. And so I think it's a lot of it is a hangover from that. It's like men have to be this, men have to be that. Whereas women's sexuality, it can be anything. It's just a really, really toxic thing. But I think a hangover from that may be part of it. We see it as well in religious texts, for example. It will be like, a man must not lie with a man, etc. But there's nothing about lesbianism because it's like, well, women's sexuality, we didn't even think of that. So I think that's part of it. I don't know. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I also think there's something to be said in that because so much of society is designed and catered by and for men, most like straight men are attracted to women. So for them, 2 women making out is like, oh, that's really fun and hot, but they're not attracted to men. So for them, 2 men making out is icky because I would never do that. So I think that's a big part of it as well, is because they're looking at it through the lens of not are these women or are these men into each other and enjoying themselves. They're looking at it through the lens of, do I want to partake in this? Do I want to be involved? No, I don't want to be involved, so I'm going to condemn it and say it's disgusting. And that's not to say also that these types of homophobes actually support gay women and queer women. They don't. They're fetishizing it. They just think it's hot, and for them it's that fantasy of one day they'll invite me to join. That's why they like it. They're not actually, and they won't exactly because they're gay. That's
Just to make it obvious.
but they don't seem to understand that. They're like, one day I'll ask the right lesbian. It's like, I don't think you will.
Not with that attitude.
No. But I think that's a big part of it as well. It's kind of people, and predominantly cishet men, looking at it through that lens of, is this attainable? Is this something I can have? And if it's something they can have, then they're interested in it, and then they think it's hot and sexy, and if not, then they think it's bad and gross. So I don't think it's so much that queer women and lesbianism and all that entails is more accepted or seen as less weird. I just think it's marginalized in a different way.
More fetishized than anything else.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Steph.
That's okay.
Shall we take another question? One here? Yeah. We'll make it easy for you. Nice and close. Thank you.
Hi, Ian. One of the words that resonated was find. As Google search results turn to shit because of spammy plagiarism crap, and platforms push crap content because it generates involvement. What are you doing about being found?
Does anyone have the answer to that one?
I mean,
Just keep talking,
yeah.
really. I just keep posting and just seeing where it goes. I mean, you guys can probably speak to this more than I can, but
I think what makes a successful individual in terms of being online or being an activist is that we don't go into it thinking we want people to look at us and think, oh my God, this is the non-binary person, this is the person that we will get all our information from. I think it's really important that when we are creating content online that we are doing so in a vast way, in a way that allows people to join the conversation. And it's about signaling to other people as well and not being like, I hold all the information, I hold all the keys. It's about sharing that information and signposting other people. So for example, I like to a lot of the time work with individuals that maybe their platform is smaller, but their work they're doing is amazing, but they're just not getting the time of day. So I will give my platform to them and allow that time to shine. And it is about working together as a community and about finding the people that you can connect with and you can work with and you can, you know, provide for one another. And yeah, it's difficult because I don't think, for me personally, I don't go out there being like, I want everyone to know that I'm a non-binary person and that you should go to me for all of your content. I make content so that if somebody does find it, they're like, wow. And sometimes that means that, you know, I'll upload a picture of like one of my pet rats, but in the caption, it's actually a really profound conversation about non-binariness. And people are like, I came here for the rat, I stay for the non-binary comment. And I think that's something as well, is just saying, you know, you're welcome in this space. And if you find something you like and you want to stay, feel free to. But if you don't want to, there's no pressure. And if you want to go elsewhere because someone else is doing better than me, go for it. Or if someone's got a different perspective, go for it. And I think that's something that can be toxic online as well, as you see individuals kind of being like, this is my content, I don't want to bring anyone in. But in reality, there's so much more power when we work together with other content creators. And we, especially if you've got a platform, I highly recommend working with someone who doesn't have perhaps as many followers as you, but has an idea or a concept. Gatekeeping your following, I think, is dangerous for our community. The queer community is all about accepting each other and allowing each other space to be who they want to be and to learn from one another. So why would we gatekeep our communities online?
you just reminded me of a point, actually, in terms of like finding people. I know because Googling can be tough. Just following like certain people online, because then, like you said, they'll then promote other people. So like, and even I do this on Instagram sometimes, just go through people's followings, see who they're following, see who follows them, and that will lead you down a whole wonderful rabbit hole of new creators and new people to follow.
Or tagged images, because then you'll fit, if you've got like tags, they'll be like, oh yeah, I met this person, or I did this event with this person, and then the ball rolls and you end up following 20 people, but you've found amazing creatives. That's why it's always really important, if you go to an event, please tag people, because, you know, passing that information forward is really important. And yeah.
Also, like, speaking of being found and tagging people, should we share our handles?
Let's be shameless. Go on.
Let's go down the line.
You can start.
Okay. I'm just Instagram because that's more than enough for me. Jesus Christ. It's at Erin James with 2 S's and 2 underscores.
My Instagram, mostly Instagram as well, is Body Posy Poet, but body is with an I because I like a bit of alliteration.
I'm on Instagram and I'm also on TikTok, so that is Sex Theory with D. I have to censor the E in sex because Instagram hates sex content creators and organisations, so it's S3X Theory with D.
I'm on Twitter. I refuse to. I'm actually going to dead name Twitter. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and I do have some old YouTube videos floating around. You can find them. They're not really hard. They're not hard to find. But all of my socials are at Queer Murphys. So the word queer and then MURPHYS. That's me.
And mine is at Not Defining, all one word. It's on YouTube, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. I think we have time for one more question. Just one more. Okay, we'll take it here.
Thank you. My name's Marty. The question I had was for people on the panel that experience gender dysphoria and are creating content. with their image. How do you navigate that? Because that's something I find really difficult. So I want your best tips, please. Thank you.
Anyone comfortable to speak on that?
I mean, I can briefly say, like, as a femme presenting non-binary person, I quite often feel like not similar to what you were talking about, like not non-binary enough, and that sometimes if I'll post something, again, it ties back into that perception, and that actually like other people's perception of me and my body, and like really labeling me as she, her, and like as a female, a woman, can be quite damaging. So I think something that someone said earlier in the panel that I was in was about you knowing is enough, and so I'm really trying to ingrain that in myself, that I know as much as I can, like, and accept and love my body and my non-binariness, and that if I'm finding those triggers like online, that again, like, it's okay to sign off and take a step away. But yeah, maybe someone else can speak more on that.
Some of my more things that you can actually do. One of them is to accept that some days you're not going to be able to film, and that's okay. And if you have a deadline for content, you can reach out to someone and say, hey, I can't do this right now because I can't look at myself in the mirror. I've had to do that before and it's difficult, but setting those boundaries with yourself and not forcing yourself to video yourself, because you will hate it more. And it will bring up feelings of dysphoria more because you will repeat that memory whenever you film. I think it's also important that you start to film just for you, and you don't have to post that. Just film for you and keep it in your gallery, and maybe go back to it every now and then. If you want to edit it, put it out. If you don't, leave it to die. It doesn't have to go anywhere. Just film for you. I think that's something that I loved about lockdown, is that everybody filmed everything that we did, and you just did it for yourself. And that got you really comfortable with creating content online. And then one final thing is that if you can, reach out to friends and say, hey, can you edit this video that I filmed? Because sometimes I can't look at myself or I can't hear my voice. And sometimes I have to put captions on because I can't stand the sound of my own voice. So I'll get either someone else to edit it or I'll find a way around it. So there are ways that you can reach out to people as well if you can't handle it. But it takes time and practice and just getting used to yourself on camera. And just make silly videos for you and not for anyone else. And then eventually you might put one of them out.
I just wanted to say, quickly following on from that, a nice kind of unexpected positive that I've found from filming myself over the years and having it on social media is it has surprisingly helped with dysphoria, because when I've had days when I feel really dysphoric, I go back and I can watch these old videos and see how far I've come. And then so when my brain is being silly and telling me like you look a certain way or you haven't changed or nothing's helping, I look back at videos from 4, 5, 7 years ago and I'm like, no, I've definitely changed. That's a whole different human. So that's something that's been really beneficial and like unintentional about filming stuff for social media, but that's definitely something that's helped me a lot with dysphoria.
Just one final thing following on from that is that it's okay to archive stuff as well. You don't have to keep stuff online if you don't feel comfortable with it, and that's something that I've learned. I recently had a video that was like, it had 2 million views, but I thought, I don't want this online, I don't want people to see me, and that's okay. You don't have to leave something online just because it's done well. If you don't feel comfortable in it, take it down. You don't have to keep all your content online, because you grow as a person, as does we all. So your brand and your content online is going to grow. So it's okay if you look back in a few weeks and you go, oh, I don't like that video of myself. You can take it down. You're not forced to have these videos online if you don't want them online. You have control of what you put out and when you put it out and when you take it down.
Thank you so much. So I think we are just about at the end of our time for today. I want to really say a big, big thank you to all of you. Thank you so much for sharing with us today, and thank you so much for all of the sharing that you do online. Thank you to you all for being here. I know that we only had a few questions, but I'm sure that I speak for everyone when I say that we'd be happy to chat with you either here or online later on and just continue the conversation. Thank you to our wonderful interpreter. It's always fun to watch them interpret that. And to all the fabulous volunteers for making this wonderful event. So we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for coming.